An immigrant janitor stayed late to clean, never realizing the CEO would make him partner for his work ethic. That's what crossed Eduardo Reyes' mind as he glanced at the framed newspaper clipping on his office wall. A reminder of how far he'd come. 5 years ago, he would have laughed at such an impossible notion. 5 years ago, he was just trying to survive. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Eduardo pushed his cleaning cart down the empty corridor of Meridian Technologies. It was nearly midnight. The vast office building eerily quiet except for the occasional buzz of the lights and the squeak of his cart's wheels against the polished floor. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. Everyone who had homes filled with laughter, dinner waiting on tables, children's homework to check. Eduardo's shoulders ached from the day's labor. 11 hours already and still 3 more floors to go. His calloused hands gripped the handle of the mop, knuckles white with exhaustion. Yet there was a quiet dignity in his movements, a methodical precision to how he dipped the mop into the bucket, wrung it out, and swept it across the floor in perfect arcs that left no streak behind. At 42, Eduardo's face carried the weathered lines of a man who had faced more storms than sunshine. Deep creases framed his eyes, not just from age, but from squinting against the harsh sun during the years he'd worked construction after first arriving in America. His dark hair was peppered with gray at the temples, and a scar ran along his right forearm, a permanent reminder of the factory accident that had cost him his previous job. Tonight, like every night for the past 8 months, he worked alone in the gleaming corporate headquarters. The building housed dreams and ambitions that seemed galaxies away from his reality. During the day, men and women in tailored suits strode through these halls, their conversations filled with terms like market projections and quarterly earnings, a foreign language to Eduardo, who had never finished high school back in Guatemala. He paused at the window of the 30th floor, looking out at the city lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Somewhere out there was the small one-bedroom apartment he shared with his daughter, Lucia. She would be asleep by now, her textbook still open on the kitchen table. At 17, she was everything he'd sacrificed for. Brilliant, determined, with dreams big enough for both of them. "You don't need to stay so late every night," his supervisor had told him repeatedly. "The executive floors can wait until morning." But Eduardo had seen the way the CEO, Mr. Davidson, noticed details. How he'd once commented on a smudged window during a morning meeting. Eduardo couldn't risk losing this job. Not with Lucia's college applications due in a few months. Each perfectly polished surface, each empty trash bin, each spotless bathroom was another brick in the foundation of his daughter's future. The lights in the corner office suddenly flicked on, startling Eduardo from his thoughts. He hadn't realized anyone was still in the building. Through the glass walls, he could see a man hunched over a desk piled high with papers. Mr. Davidson himself, the CEO, whose name adorned the building directory in gold letters. Eduardo quickly pushed his cart to the side, not wanting to disturb the executive with the noise. He would come back to this section later. But as he turned to leave, he knocked over a bottle of cleaning solution, the plastic clattering loudly against the floor. The CEO's head snapped up, eyes finding Eduardo immediately. Eduardo froze, an apology already forming on his lips. "Hello there," Mr. Davidson called, rising from his chair and walking to his office door. He was tall and lean, with silver hair and the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of being listened to. "You're here late." "Lo siento. I am sorry, sir," Eduardo said, his accent thickening with nervousness. "I did not mean to disturb." The CEO waved away the apology. "You didn't disturb me. I was looking for an excuse to take a break anyway." He studied Eduardo for a moment. "You're new, aren't you? I don't recall seeing you before." 8 months, farmer, sir," Eduardo replied, standing straighter. "I work night shift." 8 months? Mr. Davidson's eyebrows rose. "And you're still here at—" He checked his watch. "Midnight? Shift ended at what time?" 9, sir. "But there is much to do. The building, it is very big." Something in the CEO's expression shifted, a curiosity kindling behind his tired eyes. "What's your name?" "Eduardo Reyes, sir." "Well, Eduardo Reyes, do you always stay 3 hours past your shift?" Eduardo hesitated, uncertain if he was being reprimanded. "The work, it must be done properly. Tomorrow, important clients are coming. The floors must shine." Mr. Davidson stepped closer, his gaze intense but not unkind. "How did you know about tomorrow's clients?" "I listen, sir. When I clean the conference rooms, I hear the secretaries talk about preparations. So I make extra sure those rooms are perfect." The CEO nodded slowly, something like respect flickering across his face. He glanced at Eduardo's cart, noting the meticulous organization of the cleaning supplies, each bottle labeled, each cloth folded precisely. "Do you have family, Eduardo?" The question caught him off guard. "A daughter, sir, 17 years old. Very smart. She wants to be a doctor. And you're working until midnight to help her become a doctor?" Eduardo's chin lifted slightly, a flash of pride breaking through his exhaustion. "She studies until midnight too, sir. We both work for her future." Something passed over Mr. Davidson's face, recognition perhaps, or remembrance. He looked back at his own office, at the stacks of reports and the glowing computer screen. "I have a proposal for you, Eduardo. I was about to order some food. I've been here since 6 a.m. and forgot to eat dinner. Would you join me? I'd appreciate the company." Eduardo's eyes widened in surprise. "Sir, I have work to finish. The work will be there tomorrow. I'm the CEO. I'm giving you permission to take a break." A small smile softened his features. "Consider it an order if that helps." 20 minutes later, Eduardo found himself sitting awkwardly across from Richard Davidson in the executive conference room. Cartons of Chinese food spread between them. The rich aroma of beef and broccoli filled the air, making Eduardo realize how hungry he truly was. He hadn't eaten since the simple sandwich he'd packed for lunch. "My father was a janitor," Mr. Davidson said suddenly, breaking the uncomfortable silence. He picked up a piece of broccoli with his chopsticks. "At a high school in Detroit. Worked 2 jobs for 30 years to put me through college." Eduardo looked up in surprise, his plastic fork pausing midway to his mouth. "He stayed late every night too," the CEO continued. "Said he couldn't leave until every classroom was ready for the next day's learning. The teachers thought the classrooms cleaned themselves." A soft chuckle escaped him. "I used to help him during summer breaks. That's how I learned that the people who stay after everyone leaves are often the ones who make success possible for everyone else." Eduardo didn't know how to respond. He chewed slowly, the food rich and flavorful on his tongue, a luxury he rarely afforded himself. "Tell me about your daughter," Mr. Davidson said, leaning back in his chair. And somehow, in that sterile conference room with its polished table and ergonomic chairs, Eduardo found himself speaking from the heart. He told the CEO about Lucia's perfect grades, about how she tutored younger children at the community center on weekends, about how she'd won the state science competition with a project on affordable water filtration systems inspired by techniques from their village back home. "She sounds remarkable," Mr. Davidson said when Eduardo finally paused. "You must be very proud." "She is my life," Eduardo said simply. He hesitated, then added, "Her mother died when she was 8, cancer. Since then, it has been just us." The CEO nodded, a shadow crossing his face. "My wife passed away 3 years ago. Car accident. Sometimes I stay late because the house feels too empty." The confession hung in the air between them, an unexpected bridge forming across their vastly different lives. "I have been meaning to make some changes around here," Mr. Davidson said after a moment, his tone shifting to something more deliberate. "The company has grown too fast. We've lost touch with what happens on the ground. I've been thinking about creating a new position, someone to oversee facilities management, employee experience, operational efficiency, someone who sees what others miss." Eduardo listened politely, though he wasn't sure why the CEO was sharing these business details with him. "When did you come to this country, Eduardo?" 12 years ago, sir." "And before that, what did you do in Guatemala?" Eduardo set down his fork, memories stirring. "I managed my family's store. Small, but many people came to us. Later, I ran a cooperative, farmers bringing crops to market together instead of alone. We did better that way. But then the violence came to our region. I had to take Lucia somewhere safe." Mr. Davidson leaned forward, his interest visibly piqued. "You ran a business cooperative?" "Small one, yes. Sir, 30 families. I kept the accounts, arranged transportation, negotiated with buyers." Eduardo shrugged, as if these accomplishments were nothing. Here, without proper papers at first, without good English, such work was not possible. The CEO studied him with new eyes. "And now, your status?" "Green card, sir. 3 years now. We did everything legally. It took time, but Lucia and I, we follow rules." Mr. Davidson nodded, seemingly making a decision. "Eduardo, I'd like you to come to my office tomorrow. Not for cleaning, for a meeting. After 2 p.m. Can you do that?" Confusion furrowed Eduardo's brow. "Sir, my shift begins at, I'll clear it with your supervisor." "This is important." He reached into his pocket and handed Eduardo a business card. "Just show this at reception. They'll bring you up." Eduardo accepted the card gingerly, as if it might dissolve between his fingers. The heavy stock paper bore the company logo and Mr. Davidson's name in embossed letters. May I ask why, sir? The CEO stood, gathering the empty food containers. Because, Eduardo Reyes, I think you've been cleaning the wrong floors in this building. Tomorrow we'll discuss which floor you should really be working on. That night, Eduardo couldn't sleep. He sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment, the CEO's business card propped against the salt shaker, its edges already softening from how many times he'd picked it up and turned it over in his hands. Lucia found him there when she woke for school, still in his uniform, a cold cup of coffee untouched before him. "Papa, did you sleep at all?" She touched his shoulder, her face creased with concern. She had her mother's eyes, deep brown with flecks of amber, intelligent and kind. "I have a meeting today," he said, his voice rough with fatigue, "with the CEO of the company." Lucia's eyes widened. "Well, what? Why? Is everything okay?" Eduardo explained the strange encounter, the shared meal, the cryptic invitation. With each detail, his daughter's expression shifted from worry to cautious excitement. "Papa, this could be something good. Maybe he noticed how hard you work." Eduardo shook his head. "Mija, men like Richard Davidson don't notice men like me, except when something needs cleaning. Perhaps there is a special event, some important client who needs extra attention." But Lucia's optimism wouldn't be dampened. She insisted on ironing his best shirt, the light blue one he wore to church, and polishing his only pair of dress shoes. She even knotted his tie, standing on tiptoes to adjust it around his collar. "There," she said, stepping back to examine her handiwork. "Now you look like the smartest man in the room." "Because you are." Eduardo kissed her forehead, drawing strength from her confidence. "What would I do without you, Mija?" "You'll never have to find out," she replied with a smile. When Eduardo arrived at Meridian Technologies that afternoon, the security guard at the front desk did a double-take. Used to seeing him shuffle in with his cleaning uniform during shift changes, the man barely recognized Eduardo in his pressed shirt and slacks. "I have a meeting with Mr. Davidson," Eduardo said, trying to keep his voice steady as he presented the business card. The guard's eyebrows shot up, but he made a quick call, then directed Eduardo to the express elevator, the one reserved for executives that Eduardo had only ever cleaned, never ridden. The journey to the 40th floor took less than a minute, but to Eduardo, it felt like rising into another world. His stomach fluttered with each passing floor, nervousness building. The doors opened directly into a reception area where a stylish woman with a sleek bob cut sat behind a curved desk. "Mr. Reyes?" she said, standing to greet him. "Mr. Davidson is expecting you. Please follow me." Mr. Reyes. No one had called him that since he'd arrived in America. The CEO's office was massive, larger than Eduardo's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, and modern art adorned the walls. Mr. Davidson stood when they entered, coming around his desk to shake Eduardo's hand firmly. "Thank you for coming, Eduardo. Please have a seat." Eduardo perched on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent, his back straight, hands folded in his lap. "I've been doing some research since our conversation last night," Mr. Davidson began, returning to his seat. "You've been with the company 8 months. Your supervisor's reports describe you as exceptionally thorough, reliable, and detail-oriented. You've never called in sick, never been late, and apparently never leave until the job is done, even if that means hours of unpaid overtime." Eduardo shifted uncomfortably. "The work must be done properly." "Indeed," the CEO nodded. "I also took the liberty of speaking with some of the staff who work late. The financial team on the 32nd floor tells me you've helped them recover lost documents twice. The marketing director mentioned you noticed a leak in the ceiling before it damaged their new equipment. And apparently you've been watering the plants in the lobby because you noticed they were being neglected." Heat rose in Eduardo's cheeks. "They were dying, sir. Plants need care like people. Like businesses," Mr. Davidson added meaningfully. He leaned forward. "Eduardo, I've been watching this company grow for 20 years. What started as a small tech firm has become a corporation with over 5,000 employees. We've expanded so quickly that we've lost something essential along the way. The attention to detail, the personal touch, the sense that someone is looking after the whole, not just their department." He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Last night I realized something. While I've been up here worrying about stock prices and quarterly reports, you've been caring for this company in ways I never considered. You see this building, and by extension, this business, as something worth nurturing, protecting, improving. Not just cleaning." Eduardo remained silent, uncertain where this was heading. "I want to create a new position," Mr. Davidson continued, turning back to face him. Director of Operational Excellence and Facility Management. The role would involve overseeing all aspects of our physical workspace, identifying inefficiencies, implementing improvements, ensuring our environment supports our employees' best work. It would require someone who notices what others miss, who understands that excellence is in the details, who treats the company as if it were their own. He returned to his desk and picked up a folder. Based on what you told me about your experience managing the cooperative in Guatemala, plus what I've observed about your work ethic here, I believe you're uniquely qualified for this position. Eduardo's heart pounded so loudly he was certain the CEO could hear it. Sir, I am just a janitor. I have no degree, no formal training in business. No, Mr. Davidson agreed. But you have something more valuable, practical wisdom and integrity. You've demonstrated more care for this company as a janitor than some executives who've been here for years. He slid the folder across the desk. This contains a job description and a salary offer. It would mean a significant change for you. Daytime hours, office instead of cleaning cart, management responsibilities. With trembling fingers, Eduardo opened the folder. The number on the salary line made his breath catch. It was nearly 5 times what he currently earned. This cannot be right, he stammered. It's the standard rate for a director-level position. Mr. Davidson said matter-of-factly. There's also a provision for tuition assistance for both you and your daughter. Eduardo looked up sharply. For Lucia? The CEO smiled. Consider it an investment in future talent. A doctor in the family could come in handy someday. Eduardo's vision blurred with unexpected tears. He blinked rapidly, trying to maintain his composure. Mr. Davidson, why would you do this? You do not know me. I know enough, the older man replied. My father cleaned floors his entire life so I wouldn't have to. He was the smartest, most hardworking man I've ever known, but no one ever gave him the chance to be more. I promised myself if I ever found someone like him, someone with that same quiet dignity and relentless work ethic, I wouldn't make the same mistake. He leaned back in his chair. There's one more thing. This position comes with a small equity stake in the company. Not enough to make you rich overnight, but enough that if we continue to grow, you'll share in that success. In essence, you'd become a minor partner in the business. The words echoed in Eduardo's mind. Partner. From janitor to partner. It seemed impossible. The kind of thing that happened in movies, not real life. Not to people like him. I need time to think, he managed to say. Of course. Take the weekend. Talk it over with your daughter. Mr. Davidson stood, extending his hand. But Eduardo, know this. This isn't charity. It's strategy. I need someone who sees this company the way you do. Someone who stays until the job is done right. That evening, when Eduardo told Lucia about the offer, she screamed so loudly their neighbor knocked on the wall. She threw her arms around his neck, crying and laughing simultaneously. I knew it, Papa. I knew someone would see how amazing you are. But doubt still plagued him. Mija, these people have educations, degrees. They speak perfect English. What if I cannot do this job? What if I embarrass myself? And you? Lucia took his weathered hands in hers. Papa, when Mama died and we had nothing, did you give up? When the immigration lawyers said our case would take years, did you quit? When you worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, did you complain? Eduardo shook his head silently. You've been solving problems your whole life, she continued, managing with limited resources, finding creative solutions, working harder than anyone else. That is business, Papa. The rest, the fancy words, the computer programs, those can be learned. The truth of her words seeped into him slowly, like water into parched earth. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps the skills he'd developed through necessity were exactly what Mr. Davidson valued. On Monday morning, Eduardo Reyes walked into Meridian Technologies wearing a new suit, the first he'd purchased in over a decade. He signed his acceptance of the position with steady hands, his signature bold against the crisp white paper. The transition wasn't easy. There were whispers, of course, raised eyebrows and muttered comments. The janitor in the boardroom, the immigrant giving directions. Eduardo struggled with the technology, stumbled over business terminology, felt the weight of skeptical stares during his first presentations, but he also discovered unexpected allies. The maintenance staff, who had always respected his work ethic, now enthusiastically supported his initiatives. Administrative assistants, who remembered how he'd always greeted them by name while others had looked past them, became his eyes and ears throughout the building. Even some executives, initially dismissive, grew to appreciate his straightforward approach and uncanny ability to identify problems before they became crises. Within 6 months, Eduardo had reorganized the facility's management system, reducing costs by 22%. He'd implemented a new layout for the customer service department based on his observations of workflow patterns, improving productivity. He'd even launched an employee suggestion program that had already generated 3 patentable ideas. "You see the company as an ecosystem," Mr. Davidson remarked during their quarterly review. "Not separate departments fighting for resources, but interconnected parts of a whole." It's exactly the perspective we needed. A year into his new role, Eduardo stood nervously in the company auditorium, waiting to present the annual Operational Excellence Award he'd established. The ceremony was his idea, a way to recognize the often invisible workers who kept the company running smoothly. The cleaning staff, maintenance team, mailroom personnel, and administrative support had all been invited to attend, many entering this space for the first time. As he stepped to the podium, Eduardo caught sight of Lucia in the front row, her face glowing with pride. Beside her sat Mr. Davidson, who gave him an encouraging nod. 1 year ago, Eduardo began, his accent still present, but his voice clear and confident. "I was pushing a cleaning cart through these halls after everyone had gone home. Today, I stand before you as Director of Operational Excellence and a partner in this company." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the audience. "Some might call this a miracle or luck, but I believe it is something else. It is what happens when someone truly sees you. Not just your job title or where you came from, but your character, your dedication, your potential." He gestured toward the cleaning and maintenance staff seated together. "Every person in this room contributes to our success. Every floor polished, every document filed, every bathroom cleaned, every call answered. These are not small things. These are the foundation upon which everything else stands." In the back of the room, Eduardo noticed a figure he recognized, his former supervisor from the cleaning company, looking somewhat bewildered to see his ex-employee speaking from the stage. "Today we recognize those whose work often goes unnoticed, but is essential to our mission. But first, I want to share a truth I have learned. No one is just a janitor. No one is just an assistant. No one is just anything. We are all capable of more than the labels we wear." As he announced the award winners and presented them with certificates and bonus checks, Eduardo felt a sense of completion. The circle that had begun with Mr. Davidson noticing his late-night cleaning was now expanding to include others who deserved recognition. After the ceremony, as people mingled over refreshments, Mr. Davidson approached with Lucia. "That was quite a speech," the CEO said. "You've come a long way in a year." "We both have," Eduardo replied, noting how the CEO's formerly aloof demeanor had softened, how he now knew the names of staff at all levels. "Your father would be proud," Eduardo added quietly. "The janitor's son who remembers to see the janitors." Something flickered in Mr. Davidson's eyes, gratitude perhaps, or the release of an old burden. "And your daughter is well on her way to making you equally proud." Lucia beamed. "I got my acceptance letter yesterday. Full scholarship to pre-med." Eduardo's heart swelled. This moment of possibility, of doors flung wide open, was what he had crossed borders for, had scrubbed floors for, had stayed late for. Later that evening, as Eduardo locked his office, with his name on the door, he paused to straighten a framed photograph on the wall. It showed him and Mr. Davidson at the company retreat, both in casual clothes, laughing at something off camera. Beside it hung his first business card, preserved under glass: Eduardo Reyes, Director of Operational Excellence, Partner. He ran his fingers over the embossed letters, still sometimes disbelieving. An immigrant janitor who stayed late to clean, never realizing the CEO would make him partner for his work ethic. His life had become the kind of story people share, to remind themselves that sometimes, just sometimes, the world recognizes the quiet dignity of invisible work. As he turned off the light and closed the door, Eduardo thought of all the night shift workers currently arriving throughout the city, the cleaners, security guards, hospital orderlies, and countless others whose labor kept the world turning while others slept. He wondered how many undiscovered talents, how many potential leaders were pushing mops and emptying trash cans at this very moment. Perhaps, he thought as he headed home to celebrate with Lucia, his story could be more than just his own good fortune. Perhaps it could be a reminder to look more closely at the people we pass every day without truly seeing. Because sometimes the person staying late to ensure everything is perfect for tomorrow isn't just a dedicated worker. Sometimes they're a future partner, waiting to be recognized.